Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Hare Krishna. Our spiritual master Srila Prabhupada taught the message of Bhagavad Gita all over the world. He taught the actual message of Bhagavad Gita. Can everyone hear you? Yeah, you're saying you're sitting at the front. Ladies sitting at the back, can they ask them? There are many misinterpretations of Bhagavad Gita. Srila Prabhupada taught the message of Bhagavad Gita as Krishna spoke it to Arjuna and as Arjuna understood it from Krishna. Bhagavad Gita, as I hope you all know, was spoken by Bhagavan Krishna to Arjuna. It was a specific message that Krishna spoke to Arjuna, and through Arjuna that is meant for everyone else. The specific message is that Krishna himself is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that we as jivas, being very tiny and dependent on him, need to surrender to him for our own well-being. This message was not known in the Western world, and nor was it very clearly understood even in India. There have been many people who have claimed to speak the message of Bhagavad Gita. Among them, some are very famous in the spiritual history of India. In this area of South India, the influence of two great acharyas is still felt. I'm specifically talking of Sri Ramanuja Acharya and Sri Madhvacharya. And they both established the same point, that Vishnu is supreme and we are all his servants, on the basis of Bhagavad Gita, all dependent on him. Or if we could put it in another way, we are all his adhina. Another very influential acharya has been Shankaracharya, but he gave the very confusing idea that Jiva and Ishvara are the same, but Ramanuja and Madhva opposed this. And actually it's nonsense that Jiva and Ishvara are the same. It's just nonsense, that's all. You don't have to be a great Sanskrit Pandit to understand that this is just nonsense. We are Jivas, we are very tiny living beings, and Ishvara means the Supreme. And even by imagination, we cannot be the same as Ishvara. But somehow if you become a Sanskrit Pandit, you are able to juggle up some different words and come out with this very strange idea that Jiva and Ishvara are all the same. It's just like being a great mathematician and making a very complex equation and coming up with the conclusion that 1 equals 2. Calculation, in modern Canada they probably say calculation. So you may be bring in all kinds of complex theorems, but if the conclusion is that 1 equals 2, it's nonsense. And you may be a very impressive mathematician and talk of sines and cosines and differential calculus and so many things and bring in all kinds of Greek symbols. But if the ultimate conclusion is 1 equals 2, it's nonsense, and even a child should be able to understand. 1 equals to 2 is nonsense, but if we say that the infinitesimal Jeev is equal to the infinite Supreme Lord, that's even more nonsense. Hasyaspada. You don't have any colloquial term. Nonsense is a really good word. Bakwas. If you say hasyaspada, it sounds like something respectable. Urdu has its usages also. Yeah. So, Srila Prabhupada gave us Bhagavad Gita as it is, that there is the Supreme. We are not the Supreme. We are suffering in this material world under the chronic illusion that we can be happy by not serving Krishna. And that the only thing that we really have to do in life is to serve Krishna. Of course, in material existence, everyone's very busy doing all kinds of things except serving Krishna. And in the modern age, people are very proud of their science and technology, and they really think that they've made life a lot better by their science and technology. But Srila Prabhupada would always point out, on the basis of Krishna's teachings in Bhagavad Gita, that this science and technology really hasn't benefited us at all. Because the real problems of life are janma, mrityu, jara, vyadhi, birth, death, old age and disease. And notwithstanding our cell phones, which you may all kindly turn off if you haven't already done so, and various other technological improvements, so-called improvements, we all have to die. By the way, there's much propaganda about how we're making so much progress in medicine, but still, people are getting sick. If we're really making such progress in improving people's health, why are there so many hospitals and they're always completely packed full? Yeah. There's propaganda that we're overcoming diseases. We've conquered diseases. In the modern age, there are more new diseases. Previously, there's cancer, AIDS, then all the heart disease, mental disease. These are all increasing new problems, new health problems. So this propaganda that we're improving society, it's bogus. Srila Prabhupada would also, actually his preaching of Bhagavad Gita was in many ways unconventional. He was preaching Bhagavad Gita in a world that is, the modern world is very different from that in which all the previous acharyas preached. So Srila Prabhupada, a lot of his preaching was pointing out how the modern society is misleading us. I think we have to all squeeze up a bit here. If you come forward, yeah, please. If you move in here, you can make some more space. Just like this city of Bangalore the population has expanded tremendously over the last 20 or 30 years. How many of you're all living in Bangalore, everyone here, apart from those who are traveling with me or visiting me? Isn't it? You're all living in Bangalore, almost all. Some have come especially to visit me. So, how many of your parents also lived in Bangalore? I know there are some others. There are some here. You can kindly raise your hands. If your parents also lived, you're born here in Bangalore, how many? So, less than half. Less than half. That just goes, people are just pouring into Bangalore all the time. New buildings going up. This Bangalore has come up not so much on the basis of industry in terms of producing anything, but the famous companies of Bangalore are these software companies. So good job, I must say, because most people translate it's mostly English with a few grammatical things thrown in here and there. Really trying hard. Congratulations. Software, I think you say software. IT. Which depends on highly educated people, right? So, Bangalorians, what are they called? What's the word? Bangalorians, but now it's Bengaluru, so Bengaloruns or what? Whatever it may be. It's, well, that's another thing. It's more than 50% of the population is not Kannada. So, it's a highly educated population. And, of course, not everyone's highly educated. You also need rickshaw drivers and people selling sabjis who don't require higher education. But even the people selling sabjis, they all speak 2 or 3 languages. They have to deal with all the different people. I know Americans, they're astonished. They come to Europe and they travel on the trains and they find the bartenders in the trains speak 3 or 4 languages because the trains go throughout Europe in different countries, and they think, oh, these people are highly educated and they're just selling drinks in a train. Because to know so many languages requires some intelligence and skill. So it's a city that's grown on intelligence. But according to Bhagavad Gita, as we learned from Srila Prabhupada, this intelligence is it's a complex form of foolishness. Yeah, it's like it's another way of the highly the mathematician who's very expert in solving knows all the different theorems, but the ultimate conclusion he comes up with 1 = 2. I used to have that problem myself in mathematics. I'd go through all the equations, I'd come up, and then at the end it didn't make any sense. I'd have to go all the way back there. I made all these complex theorems, and I made some simple arithmetical mistake. And you have to go all through it and find out where you went wrong. So people are highly educated, but they have not a clue what the actual purpose of life is. I mean, even materially, the education is often not very helpful. I read a comment from a young woman who has just had her first child, and she said, I was educated for 18 years, and no one ever taught me the most important thing I have to do, which is how to look after children. I had no idea what to do. Physically, mentally, and I don't know what to do. Mother didn't teach, the school didn't teach. It's very common that you get young women who are highly educated, but they don't know how to make even a little sambar. And that's very important, right? You know, unless you're just going to spend your whole life eating at fast food joints. Kelsa. So, even materially, and what to speak of spiritually. There's this absurd idea that we're living a modern life and we don't need all this spiritual stuff. That's just for people in the past. But for all your bravado of now we're doing very well, we're so great in the modern age, if you just care to listen to one line of Bhagavad Gita, you'll understand that we have the same problems as we always had, namely birth, death, old age, and disease. And for all your Facebooks and cell phones and all this kind of thing, we have to suffer repeated birth and death. And one day, your on Facebook profile, your profile will be dead. That's all. What are your interests? What are your activities? Finished. So just like the modern education doesn't teach how to have a baby, it doesn't teach us how to die also. How to die is extremely important. And how to die, I'm not talking about which hospital to select, so that which in different kinds of tubes to put in your body. Just like they have time to time in the magazines in India, the 10 top colleges in India. So they say the top hospitals, but choose which hospital you want to die in.
Advertisement. No, some name.
There's no such idea.
No, there is some. Jahirat, yeah. So, Jahirat.
There's one all of us at Bhagavad Gita are very important, but we can consider one just now as we're on this topic. Yang vapi smaran bhavam tyajante kalevarang tang tame vaite kaunteya sada tad bhava bhavitaha. Whatever we think of at the time of death, according to that we get our next body. It's not enough to say, I'm a Hindu, I'm a Christian, I'm an atheist. I don't even have time to think about this, I'm a software engineer. But according to our consciousness at the time of death, we get another body. So, that means that throughout life, we should prepare our consciousness for the future. People, they go for like practically 20 years of education to prepare themselves for the life after that. But within a flash, the life is finished. You may live for 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, 90 years, but 90 years, it's all just a flash. Kshana Bangalore, just like a flash. How do you say a flash? Chana?
Kshana means moment.
Yeah, moment, but a flash. Well, a flash literally means like a lightning flash.
Mincho means like that, lightning.
Yeah. Something like a photo flash like that. So just very quick. And our whole future, our future births depend on the consciousness that we've developed throughout life. So isn't it important to get the education by which we can prepare ourselves for a better future? Actually, if we're prepared in Krishna consciousness, then we don't have to get born again at all. We can live permanently, blissfully with Krishna in the spiritual world. But if we just live only interested in how to live this life without any spiritual thought, then we're living like animals. Ahara nidra bhaya maitun. The humans and animals eat, sleep, mate and defend. We do so on 2 legs, the animals do so on 4 legs, but the consciousness is the same. So in this very rare human life, if we don't develop our consciousness of understanding that we are meant for more than living like animals, then again we get a birth as an animal. Srila Prabhupada was very critical of this modern civilization, in which the propaganda is that we're making life better. Actually, all the same problems are there as ever before: birth, death, old age and disease. And people are more confused than at any time previously. And actually, for all the different laptops and cell phones and all kinds of things people are more unhappy than previously. And we can practically see that. I mean, in Bangalore, they all look very frustrated. So neither materially they're happy, and spiritually they have no idea whatsoever. Everything about modern civilization is just a disaster. Disaster means there's no real word, is there? Ayanikavasta, something like that. It's every breath we breathe in poison. All the food we eat poison. People can't trust anyone. The father cannot trust his son. Wife cannot trust the husband, and vice versa. People think, I have to get all the latest gadgets whenever the latest iPod, iPhone, iPad, and all this kind. I have to get it. But no one is happy. People can't imagine that you can live without all these gadgets. So Srila Prabhupada is very critical of modern civilization, because on one hand it's misleading people into a whole way of life in which they're not at all happy. Even if there is any happiness in this material world, this modern civilization destroys it altogether. And it completely covers or leads us away from the real purpose of life, which is to get free from birth and death. Fortunately, the teachings of Bhagavad Gita are relevant in every age. And despite the confusion and massive ignorance that goes on in the name of education in the modern age, if anyone can take the teachings of Bhagavad Gita as presented by Srila Prabhupada, they can be saved from this confusion and ignorance. So we're asking everyone to understand the teachings of Bhagavad Gita as it is, which means as presented by Srila Prabhupada. In previous ages, previous acharyas, they presented the Vedic philosophy in great detail and great complexity. But in the modern age, people, for all our big brains in developing software, we can't understand all these things. What is the difference between Vishishtadvaita, Shuddhadvaita, Shuddhadvaita, Dvaitadvaita? It's just too much for our poor brains. Srila Prabhupada presented the essence of all these different complex philosophical systems. That we're all eternal spiritual beings, jivas, atmas. We're all meant for happiness, Satchit Ananda, isn't it? We all aspire for that, isn't it? We don't want to die, we want to live eternally, we all want to be happy. They're easy things to understand. You don't have to be a very highly educated in any subject to understand that we all want to be happy, and we all want to live eternally. And that in this material world there is no real happiness, no lasting happiness. Anyone can understand. So what is the solution? We don't know. We want to be happy, but we don't know how to be happy. We've developed a highly complex civilization with the idea that we'll make life better, but we're not happy. So the actual fact is that we are meant to be happy eternally with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So we have to serve Krishna. And it's called Bhakti. People in India, they know the word Bhakti, but they don't have a very clear idea of what actual Bhakti is. Generally people think bhakti means you pray to God to give me more money or help me pass my exam or get a visa for America or something like this. But real bhakti means we should know who is the proper object of our love. Premaspad, who is the proper object of our love. We may offer our bhakti to different demigods or to different babas or ammas and bappas and all this kind of thing. But we should know who is the actual Supreme Personality of Godhead. That person is Krishna. Krishna is all attractive. Everything about Krishna is pleasing. If we love Krishna, we will be fully satisfied. But that love for Krishna, that has to be real love. Real love doesn't mean, hey, what are you doing for me? Real bhakti means to love Krishna just because he is so lovable. And Krishna will reciprocate. If we love, actually Krishna loves us all, but we don't experience Krishna's love because we don't reciprocate with Krishna. We don't experience Krishna's love because we don't reciprocate with him. We don't offer our love to him, and therefore we don't feel it. But if we revive our Krishna consciousness, which is our natural position, then immediately we experience how Krishna reciprocates with us. And even in this life, we immediately feel happiness by taking to Krishna consciousness. The happiness of Krishna consciousness is not like the happiness of drinking a Coca-Cola. It's not like the happiness of having a big fancy car. It's not like the happiness of being Prime Minister of a country. Actually, I don't know, why does anyone want to be a Prime Minister? What a big headache. I mean, you could just be a security guard or something and have a simple job and live peacefully. Security guard, you might get beaten up. But, sell some subs. Go around the streets with some subjis on your head. There must be some kind of happiness because in being Prime Minister, because so many people are desperate to or desirous to have that position. What about being Indra or Brahma? But devotees are not interested actually in any of these positions. They're not interested in big cars and all. It's there, you can use it, but we're not going to take a loan and spend 10 years paying it off, and already within 5 years the car's already broken down anyway, because they're made like that, so they break down. So we're not going to waste our life or place our hopes on these tin can happiness. Devotees are happy, chanting Hare Krishna, talking about Krishna, serving Krishna. You don't need anything else. Of course, we're not saying that you should give up your home, your family and all this. You live like that, but chant Hare Krishna. In other words, don't take it that living in a house is all in all. The real goal of life and the real happiness in life is to always think of Krishna. So that is also the ultimate teaching of Bhagavad Gita. Antim. Yeah, it's Sarvocha, and ultimate can mean Sarvocha, and I was saying in the sense of Antim, final teaching. Manmana, Krishna says, Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mang namaskuru. Mame vaishasi satyam te pratijane priyosimi. Krishna says, always think of me, become my devotee, bow down to me, worship me. In this way you will surely come to me. I promise you this because you're my very dear friend. I may think, how can we think of Krishna in the modern age? We have to work so hard and there are so many things to do and life is so complex. But amid all these activities, we have to take time to chant the holy names of Krishna. Swalpa samaya, or whatever is required. Sufficient time. We have to chant Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama Eva Kevalam Kalau Nascheva 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 Gatiranyata. In this age of Kali, there is no other way to reach the ultimate goal of Krishna's lotus feet, but chanting his names, chanting his names, chanting his names. Don't be so busy that we don't have time to remember Krishna. Take some time in your busy life for performing bhakti sadhana. People say, I don't have time for all this. But somehow or other, most people find time to watch TV every day. It's completely useless. It's just time pass, time waste. That's all. Instead of just watching all this nonsense, become elevated. Elevate our consciousness by chanting Hare Krishna. You should not waste this valuable human life, but use it utilize it for cultivating Hari Bhakti, so that we no longer get born in this material world. We will live eternally with Krishna in the spiritual world. Hare Krishna. Any questions?